Hooray, figured it out. Awesome, awesome. Hello, everybody. Sorry about the 2-minute delay. Well, technical difficulties this Sunday morning. Thank you for joining me. If you're here, if you were here before me, my apologies. Learning about browsers this morning on the fly. So welcome to today's class. And we're going to take a moment to do some gentle seated practice. And then we'll move into standing practice for the last about 20 minutes or so. So you might choose to do the full practice, to do just the seated portion, and you might choose to even just leave a few things out, observe if something's just not available to you. Something else that can be really helpful, especially if you're working with, say, a limitation in the shoulder. I'm going to work on our shoulders from seated today a little bit, is sometimes it's really helpful, say if you had a sort of limited range of motion, first to just see where is the range of motion that you can move within where you're not feeling tensing, sharp pain, tingling, numbness. So that might mean if you've had a frozen shoulder, that if you go to raise your arm, you get to here and that's it. So that might be where you're working today. And that's absolutely fine. Better to work within a range of motion that's causing you no extreme sensation than it is to think about pushing into pain. That's a different thing. That might be something you explore with a physiotherapist. But in gentle yoga, we're really just working with how can we find ways to move, which can create ease in the body. So that effortless effort is key. So as usual, we're going to start with some footwork as our first practice. And so for those of you who are new, you might take this moment to go off into your kitchen, find something that you could use. Some of you are using tennis balls. Some of you are using dowels like this, really easy to get from the hardware store. All we've done is sand the ends of them, but really they just cut you as a round stick into, I think this is like 2.5 feet, I think, but it doesn't have to be that. Could be a stainless steel water bottle, could be a frozen water bottle, could be your dog's toy, your dryer ball, whatever you have to use. Just different items might give you a little more pressure or a little less. So I'm going to use the dowel today. This is kind of my favorite thing to use, which is a dowel, but everybody's different. I know a lot of people who have sort of reoccurring sensitivities in the feet, like plantar fasciitis or some other issue in the foot. You might choose to use something even softer. So squash ball, squishy ball, something. But keep in mind, it's really important for the foot to get movement and to keep the connective tissue in the bottom of the foot moving will help us with that sense of awareness in the feet, can help us with our balance, as well as a whole host of other things, muscle cramps, a whole bunch of things. So whichever foot you've decided to start with, as you move through the foot, you choose to add more pressure. So notice as I sit here, I'm sitting a little bit forward on the chair. And I do mention this every week, but it is really helpful to explore how can you make your seat the most beneficial to you. So what I've taken is a thin cotton blanket, and I folded it in so there's just maybe a little bit of a 1-inch sort of lift. I put it on the chair, not right at the edge. My sit bones are going to be on the chair, and that's going to help the pelvis tilt slightly forward. I'll show you what that looks like when I sit. Okay, so the sit bones are on the blanket. This encourages the pelvis to tilt slightly forward. It's going to encourage that natural curve in the spine, and it kind of prevents this sort of rounded upper back. So it might be helpful. And then you're sitting a little on the edge. This will give you a little more ability to sort of titrate the amount of pressure you want to put into your foot. Okay, so if you want light sort of pressure in the foot, you might just stay seated upright. And if you'd like a little more pressure in the foot, you could lean a little forward. The hands are on the thigh bone, and that might add some pressure into the foot. Again, just like all the other parts of the body, super important that you find enough pressure that feels manageable, that's not causing your foot to kind of seize up or feel sharp pain. For some people, though, there might be some little crunchy bits. That's okay. As long as those crunchy bits aren't painful, please use your comfort to guide you in this practice. It's just so important. And it's very easy, especially when we're following someone on a camera or even in real life that we just want to do exactly what they suggest. But keep in mind, the variation in the human body is vast. And then on top of that, we have our personal history of what has gone on in our physical body. So as you roll through the foot, we're just going to keep it kind of light and easy today. My dowel's kind of slowly moving away from me here. I'm going to come up when I'm ready. There we go. I'm just going to bring my foot back and just take a moment to notice. My foot looks even just slightly different color than the other foot now. So this can help with, that awareness in the foot, the circulation in the feet. Starting with a light amount of pressure, just a little light pressure in the bottom of the foot. Especially important to start with light pressure if you have sort of numbness or tingling in your feet or some neuropathy. Then you might choose to do less on purpose in your foot just until you have done it a few times and note what kind of pressure is manageable for you. So again, if you feel comfortable, you could lean a little bit forward, and that's going to increase the pressure in the foot. You might just roll right through the foot, noticing where you feel sensation. What's going on in your foot today? That's it. Okay. Wonderful. Now when you take that last moment here with the dowel or your ball. Now if you are using a dowel, I like to work on my feet every day for a little bit of time anyhow. So if you have a dowel, just so you know, what I like about it is that I can do both feet at the same time. And that's kind of a nice option for some people. Difference between a ball and a dowel is the dowel will allow the tissues to kind of spread out a little bit more, which for me feels really, really good. Versus sometimes I'll choose to use a small squash ball if I want to get into a specific little spot in the foot. So there's different benefits to using the ball, the spiky ball, versus the stick or the dowel. So when you're ready, I'm going to come off of my implement or whatever you've been using. You might just put it safely aside so it doesn't get in your way. Very good. Okay. Okay, so as I sit at the edge of the chair, sitting tall, hands are on the thigh bones. Keep in mind your knee is not very stable, but your leg bone, your femur bone is the biggest, strongest bone in your body. And if you place your hands on the middle of the thigh into that strong bone, you can gently press into the thigh bones with the palms to help take a little bit of weight off the lower back as we move into the rocking chair. So with my hands on my thighs, as I sit up tall, I'm going to take a breath. On the exhale, as you hinge forward, sort of hinging from the hip crease. As you come forward, you might be pressing your hands into your thighs a little bit. And then you might choose to lift the heels. You can add a little extra stretch for your lower back. If your heels will do this comfortably, great. If not, you can leave it out, like everything, finding what works for you. So on your way up, pressing gently into the thighs with your hands as you slowly come up, taking a breath in. As your heels come down, as we lean back onto the back of the sit bones, you might allow your toes to lift. I'm encouraging my chin to come in towards my chest so that I'm not straining the neck. So think of this like a rocking chair. So the foot comes down. As you hinge forward, the heels can lift. That's it. And then as you come up, heels come down. As you lean back a little bit, maybe the toes lift. This is going to recruit some of those deep core muscles in the body. And then up. So our first movement is really the movement of the pelvis. I've named this the rocking chair. I don't know if anybody else has named it that, but it seemed like an obvious title for this movement to be a rocking chair. But essentially what's really helpful to keep in mind with this as a first movement is that it's moving the pelvis. Pelvis is tilting forward. And then as you come up, your pelvis is coming more into neutral. And then as you lean back, your pelvis is tucking back just a little bit. And the gentle movement of the pelvis is really important for your back, for happy backs, to allow the connective tissue around the pelvis to stay movable, flexible, and sort of juicy. That's right. So gentle movement can encourage those fascial layers, connective tissue around your muscles, your bones, your joints, to stay fluid-filled, movable, flexible. That's it. Let's just try one last time. Very good. Now, as we come up, let's come into just a forward position. So seated child's pose. We might explore a neck stretch. So the feet flat on the floor this time. Similar to our first move, I'm going to hinge forward. For me, the forearms on the sides is comfortable. For some people, it's more comfortable to have the hands so that there's a little less of a forward position. Most people are pretty connected to this position. I'm certain many of you taken this before. So sort of a child's pose from a chair. So you might just look straight down at the ground. Now, to add a little bit of a stretch to your neck here, I just encourage you in this position to just gently draw your chin towards your chest until you feel a little bit of a stretch in the back of your neck. I'm going to move my hair back here. So as you rest in this position, you might even close your eyes for a moment, if that's comfortable for you, just to take a first moment to check in how your neck is feeling, and can you encourage all the muscles of your face to soften, including your jaw, which might just mean inviting some space for your back teeth. Now, if you're comfortable in this position as you draw your chin a little bit more toward your chest, you might choose to very slowly start moving your chin a little over towards one shoulder. It's being really mindful and gentle. Often very small movements can cause a lot of awareness and sensation in the neck. So just go slow. You might pause back at center. I'd encourage you to do sort of a quarter movement, pause at center, and then do the other side. So just very slowly bring the chin a little over, focusing more on what you're sensing in the neck, in the shoulders. Again, it's more important what you're sensing than the range of motion or what it looks like. And then as you come back to your center, you might just take a little sigh breath here, in the nose, out the mouth. Okay, and then when you're ready, the hands coming back to your thighs. And then as you press yourself up to your first position, take a few more of those movements for the shoulders. So at any time as you do this practice, you might, in a movement, close your eyes so that you can take your awareness into the movement a little deeper. If that works for you, please feel free to do that. For some people, closing your eyes is very disorienting, very uncomfortable. If that's the case, then certainly do what works for you today. But the visualization I'd like you to think about here is the shoulder itself, moving in its full range of motion, up, back, down, and around. If we do it with both shoulders, you can think of both shoulders moving forward, and then up to your ears, back towards the back of your chair, thinking them sliding down towards your sit bones. And then once I've got that movement, then maybe I'll close the eyes. This is, again, optional. So see if I can really center my awareness in that movement. And do I feel restriction, clunkiness, clicky bits? And if I do, could I make it a smaller motion? Very good. Okay. And then we're going to try a little tension release for the shoulders now. So this is going to be a in the nose, out the mouth kind of position. We're going to do a shoulder shrug. So on your in-breath, as you bring the shoulders up, on the exhale, let the shoulders relax. Down. Take your own time. Try 2 more. Inhale up. Exhaling down. Very good. And last time. Very good. We'll just see if we can find that helpful position for the shoulder. It's called scapular stabilization. Big fancy words. It really just means that proper shoulder placement. So I'm going to bring my shoulders up to the ears, back and down. elbows close, palms up. So this position here, the elbows are close, the palms are up. This encourages the scapula to slide down and under into their rightful place. And then we can warm up a little bit of the rotator cuff here. So in this position, just see if you keep your elbows quite close to your body, how far will your hands go out to the sides without the elbows moving from that side body? Yes. So what you may notice if you have an injury in the shoulder is that one arm will go to here and one arm will only go to here. Quite common. So just see what's available to you. So it's just a great reminder, this position here, palms facing up, elbows close, to where we ideally want our shoulder blades to be in order to stay in a nice upright position without that rounded back. So if we turn our palms to face down and bring the hands to your lap now, got pretty good posture. And so we'll go right into your cat-cow movements. So now this is flexion extension of the spine. Start small, hands on your knees. As you slide your hands toward your body, take a breath in. Sit up as tall as you can. You might look just a teeny bit up to the sky. Now, as you exhale in your own breath pace here, sliding your hands forward, surrounding your upper back. So you might notice that your pelvis tucks under as your upper back rounds. And now as you slide the hands towards your hips, think of sitting up tall. Some people, they start to notice your pelvis tilts forward as we sit tall in the spinal extension. And as you sit small, sliding the hands forward in sort of a slouching position. Think of a cat stretching or reaching through your arms. You might notice that the pelvis and the head kind of move sort of in a similar fashion. They move towards each other as we slouch into the flexion of the spine. And then the head and the pelvis move away from each other as we encourage the spine to extend. So maybe in the last few, take your own pattern. Now, my suggested breathing technique might be, or sequence, might be thinking of inhaling to lengthen and exhaling as you round the spine. My breath suggestion is just that. It's a suggestion. If you have another way of breathing in this movement that feels better for you, as long as you're not holding your breath, as long as you're breathing comfortably, that is just fine. But I usually try to link inhaling to lengthen to my extension and exhaling into that flexion, the rounded spine. Good. And taking a moment to come back to your neutral position. Little shoulder roll, up, back, down, elbows close, palms up. I'll encourage the shoulders to slide down and under, and then hands back to your knees. So my favorite gentle twist is just this one we're going to do today. What I like about it is that there's no force on the spine. We're only moving in a comfortable range of motion where you're not forcing, torquing on the spine at all. So if we started at center, and again, I'm going to take a breath at center. I'm going to take one hand, you choose which to start with, slide it toward your hip and let your body turn in that direction. Think of a shoulder check in a car. As you inhale, come back to center. And as you exhale, turning the other direction. I start most of my chair yoga classes with the foundational movements of the spine. Just as sort of a primer for the spine and all the vertebrae. That's it. Thinking about the spine is that sort of main pathway that sends information from the body to the brain and from the brain to the body. That's it. So think inhale to center and exhale to gently turn. Right. Wonderful. And so come back to that first position. At any time in this practice, especially if you are sitting forward in the chair and encouraging you to sit as tall as possible, you are using a lot of those deep core muscles that work along the spine called the multifidus, along the spine. But if we've been used to using the back of chairs a lot, just sitting tall at the front of your chair, after a while, I usually, when I'm teaching in person, I will kind of notice people starting to kind of slouch because the back gets tired. This is a lot of effort just to sit up tall here. So if that's coming up, please feel free. You could sit back in your chair or just taking a moment to come forward, sort of that rocking chair position, and lifting the heels. And that might just give your spine that little relaxing break so that you feel when you come back up to sit up tall that you can maintain this for a little bit longer. All right, very good. Okay, so let's do a little side bend. We're going to do 2 today. And so the first one we're going to do, we're going to add in our first sort of seated balance exercise. Balance exercise essentially help us with the awareness of our weight centered, our weight shifting. And so we're going to kind of work with that today with a balance exercise. We haven't done it in a few weeks, so I thought we could review it. All right, so I'm going to take my right hand and I'm going to hold on to the chair. This is my anchor. Pretty important. I don't want you to fall out of your chair. And then the other arm is going to extend out. Okay, so it could be palm up, could be whichever is more comfortable for your shoulder. Good. Now I'm going to imagine I'm leaning and reaching. I always imagine reaching for the parking button in the underground parking that I can never reach. Okay, hold the chair. You might notice your opposing right sit bone has lifted a bit. Now follow the arm if you can and just see if the arm will come back to center, noticing how the sit bones come back to center. And we'll try that one more time. So the first part of this is a balance practice. We're going to shift our weight to the left as we reach to the left as far as you can go. Follow the arm. If it goes up, great. If it doesn't, you can leave the arm just to come out here and back in if it's not going to go up. Okay. And then the last one, we're going to reach to the left, reach. Very good. And then as we come all the way back up, we're going to pause here. Now I'm going to attempt to keep both sit bones nice and centered. And I'm just going to do a tiny side bend to the other side. Trying to keep your left sit bone rooted into the chair. It's going to want to lift, so I want you to root it down. And up. Very good. And then your left arm is going to come to the side of the chair, holding the chair. The right arm is going to come out. I'm going to turn to look at my right arm and I'm going to lean and reach. So my weight has shifted onto my right sit bone, reaching, and then reaching all the way up, back to center. Try that one more time, just noticing when you feel that sense of weight shifting more into that one sit bone on the right, and noticing how our weight comes back to center as the arm comes back to center. Very good. Okay, on the last one, reaching, leaning, coming back to your center. As you come back to your center, if the arm doesn't want to be here, maybe it has to be here, if that's the case of your shoulder. Rooting into the sit bones, just a tiny side bend to the left. Keep both sit bones as evenly weighted into the chair as possible. So it's more about length with a tiny bit of a side bend than it is about really collapsing over to that other side. Keep that in mind. Sit. Very good. And then as the arm comes up and back down, very good. Hands on your thighs. We're going to lift the toes, turn the feet out, put the foot down, lift the heels, turn them out, put the heels down. So I'm just going to invite you to kind of explore what that range of motion is for you today. Be aware that if we're sitting on the edge of the chair, usually when I start to work with wide angles, I have to sit a tiny bit back, just a little bit, so I don't feel like I'm sliding off of my chair. Excuse me. So you might make some adjustments there. So let's try that one more time. You're going to lift the toes, turn them out. Lift the heels, turn them out. Just kind of noticing how your heel, your ankle, your knee, they all come along for this journey. Sit. See what your comfortable widest angle is and come back. Doesn't have to be that wide. Remember, it's not what it looks like, it's what it feels like in your body. Very good. Good. All right, so now we're going to find what's a comfortable, slightly wide angle for your thighs. So I'm going to find that for myself, and I'll encourage you to find that as well. So you go heel, toe, I'm just going to take something like so. making any adjustments. Still have my knee under my ankle. So kind of notice if your feet are too far out, you want them right under so that the knee and the ankle have got a nice 90-degree angle to some relative degree here. Very good. All right. Okay, so let's do our second side bend. So I'm going to sit up as tall as I can here at center, and I'm just going to lean on over to the right. For me, the forearm on the thigh feels fine. Feels like a nice stretch in that side, left side. Could be too much for you. Maybe you just lean over a little bit and you use your hand so that you don't go quite as far. So use your comfort to guide you. And if your shoulder allows, the arm extends out, palm down. You can reach the arm around and then back. So these are really foundational movements for the spine. So I like to do these ones, pretty much every time I do a chair yoga practice. And you could just stay here and breathe if you didn't want to do the arm movement. The other arm movement that might be good for some shoulders might be up and over. And for some shoulders, that's a no-go. And you will know right away. Very good. Okay, so when you're ready to come up, take your time, go slow as you come up. A motion of the shoulders here. Very good. Anytime you feel any additional tension, feel free to do the tension release. Encourage the shoulders to relax. And then I'm going to lean on over to the other side. Just making sure that the forearm on the thigh feels comfortable, feels stretch on the other side, should feel manageable. Should be manageable sensation you can still breathe deeply into. And then maybe the arm comes around, palm is facing down. So I let the arm slice around and then back. And you could stay with that arm position. See how that changes the stretch a little. And then, of course, the third option would be the up and over. So there's so many options in this practice that I encourage you to be curious and kind with what works for you today. Yeah, and as you come up, good, we'll go shoulder roll. And we're going to do a shoulder shrug. Very good. All right, so our next movement, love this movement. It's a stretch for the QL. QL is a really big muscle, quadratus lumborum. It's a big back muscle, big stabilizer. It's a thick one. It's kind of a band-like muscle that's connected to the back part of the pelvis and to your lower rib cage. And so to stretch that, I take my hands up, palms facing forward, and I'm just going to see how much of my torso I can turn to the right comfortably. That way, if I'm not using my hands to force, I know that I'm going in a comfortable range of motion for my spine. It doesn't have to be a large motion. Then I'm going to take the hands to that thigh, and I'm just going to see if I can slide the hands down the leg. Okay, so we're stretching the opposite side here a little bit. But that doesn't mean that's where you're going to primarily feel the stretch. So keep in mind, I'll often say, you may sense a stretch here. However, it's impossible to stretch one muscle at a time. So you have the main muscle groups for stretching, but of course there's all those supporting characters. And depending on what's going on in your body, the supporting characters might be giving you more, information than some of those bigger groups. So where you feel it might not be exactly the same. So after you've done about 3 of those, you come back to your first position, shoulder roll, bring your hands up. I'm going to turn to face the other leg, hands on the leg. And so sliding your hands down the leg, just like you're pulling up your socks, you come back up. Now notice that when I come forward, I keep my head kind of in line with my neck. So I try to avoid this. Try to avoid like dropping the head down and up, just to help with the pressure in the head and not to induce any dizziness. The head stays in line with the neck and the heart. Very good. All right. Super. Okay. Wonderful. As you come back to your first position, we'll lift the toes, bring them in, and then the heels, and then the toes, and the heels. And so you're all back at your first position. Yeah. And then we're going to do a little back release. So hands on the thighs, just the first part of the rocking chair, just the forward position. So take a breath. As you exhale, as you hinge forward, maybe the heels can lift. When you lift the heels, if it's available to you, it will add a little bit of extra stretching in the lower back. If that doesn't feel good, the heels could stay on the ground. Very good. Wonderful. So as you come up now, and the heels come down, very good. We'll shoulder roll, very good. You're gonna bring your elbows close, palms up. So we'll do some warm-ups for the shoulder, and then we're gonna add either a TheraBand, a strap, or you can explore these movements without any prop, just to see what kind of range of motion is working for you today. So 3 real options coming up. First, warming up the shoulder. So from this position, we've already warmed up the rotator cuff this way. So this time, let's just see if we can hold our opposite elbows or opposite forearms. And you're going to start with just that slight movement of the elbows from one side to the other. It reminds me of that ride at the fair. It's always the big boat. You know, the big boat that goes side to side, and then eventually it goes all the way around. So if your shoulder does not want to go all the way around, stay with the side to side. Just see. The around and around might be smaller. So here's an example of the movement being smaller for the shoulder versus here would be my full range of motion, where the elbows might be pointing to the ceiling all the way down and around. So lots of options here. Could be teeny tiny circles. Okay. Could be just half movements, or it could be all the way around. It's important to find what's working for you today. Trying the other direction and noticing maybe the other direction feels quite different. So, we're not symmetrical beings. We often have a dominant side, stronger side. And then, of course, we have to factor in our history. If we've had an injury or a past injury or break in an arm or shoulder, there might be some limitations there. Very good. Okay, wonderful. As you come back to your first position, you shake out your hands, a little shoulder roll. Okay, very good. Okay, so the next movement, we are going to work with some stretches for the range of motion. And for those of you who have stretchy bands, I know quite a few of you do. If you do, great. If you don't, I'm going to encourage you to do it today without anything. So not even with a strap. So either stretchy band. If you don't have a stretchy band, you're going to do the full range of motion without. You can still get a really great stretch without. So if you're using a band, I'm going to have my palms up, elbows close. Just going to make a little fist here. So the first motion is a diagonal stretch, and I'm going to show you what it looks like with a band, and then I'm also going to show you what it looks like without. It's the exact same thing. Okay, but you're going to get a little bit of sense of resistance if you're using a band. And you might try with your band, you might try it and it might feel like too much resistance, in which case you would just put more space between your hands and that's going to lessen the resistance. If using the band causes any sharp discomfort in the shoulder, go to doing it without resistance first. So the diagonal stretch, I'm going to be taking my right arm up and my left arm down in a diagonal, like so. Like a morning stretch. Okay, very good. I'm going to show you on the other side with the band, and the elbows gather back to my center. Palms are still facing up. And then I'm stretching opposite arms in opposite directions. One's going down, one's going up. That's it. And then elbows bend and gather back to your center. So without a band, it would look the same. Stretching. And then the elbows coming in, palms face up, and then stretching in the opposite direction to wherever you get to. Again, there might be some limitation. There might be a huge limitation. It might be that you get here and you're like, oh, that's it. My arm won't go any further. Do one more on either side. Just stretching one arm up, one arm down. Yeah. Slow motion, especially if you're using a band, it's going to help you get the full muscle engagement if we go slow versus quick. Okay, very good. We'll shoulder roll. And in between, we'll shrug. Okay, so I'm going to take my arms out in front of me. For those of you who come to my fitness classes, I always do these two movements with or without a band, because they'll help to strengthen and awaken those muscles in the back that help so that when we do sit up tall, we can maintain that kind of posture. So we're recruiting some muscle. So if you didn't have a band, you're just going to have your hands out in front of you, palms up. Okay. If you have a band, same thing, except you're going to be holding your band. And then, of course, if you're using a band, you might have to modify your width to make it manageable so that with your palms facing the ceiling, you can stretch your arms all the way out to the sides and slowly back. Okay, try that 2 more times, with or without the band, extending the arms out to the sides wherever they go comfortably. Palms are facing up and back to center. 1 more time, with or without the band. That's it. I've heard someone call this the Cleopatra, which I thought was intriguing as a muscle exercise. Good. We'll shoulder roll. And the shrug. Very good. So the next one, same idea, except palms are going to face down. So if I wasn't using a band, I might just have my arms out in front of me, palms facing down, pulling them out to the sides and back to center. Okay. If you're using a band, same idea. Little gentle fist here, palms are facing the legs or the floor, and I'm going to find that manageable activation of my back muscles. I'm really doing this just to awaken those muscles this morning. So maybe 3 or 4 might be sufficient. Whereas if we were doing this as a strength and conditioning practice, we might do, say, 6 and then take a break and do another 6. But for today, I just want you to see what that feels like to get into those muscles. That's it. Very good. And you can just let your band rest on your lap. A little shoulder roll. Very good. And then shoulder shrug. All right. So the next movements can also be done with or without a band. It could also be done with a strap. So if you have a strap, though, keep in mind you're going to be sort of activating the muscles, pushing against a solid sort of resistance, versus using a band where you're going to have the flexibility in that resistance. So it does change it slightly. But let's just see what's up for you. Okay, and you can do it without a band or a strap. I'm going to show you that. So your feet are going to start right together. If you're going to use something, could be a band, could be your housecoat strap, could be a belt, could be a yoga strap. Okay, so whichever you've got, I'm going to place it on the top of the legs, cross it underneath, and hold on to the sides of it. So if you were using a belt, you might just wrap it around and tie it so you have a little bit of resistance. So if you're using a belt, you will push against it. You won't get very far. You're going to activate muscles and then relax. So if you're using a belt, notice that there's very limited range of motion right now because I'm using a strap that doesn't have any stretch in it, which is still helpful. It's still recruiting those outer hip muscles, these adductor muscles, and that is the key, and this is the goal of this movement. If you're using a band, which is my preference, if you don't have one, you can leave a comment. I can suggest where you can find them. They're pretty common. But if you're using a band, you have that little bit more flexibility to allow a range of motion. Maybe the feet can roll on their edges, going nice and slow. So you're either just leaning into the band or leaning into the strap. And then the third option, if you didn't have any props today, would be range of motion without resistance. What is a comfortable range of motion for you in this sort of butterfly movement of the knees and the hip. Really, this is for your hip joint and the outer abductor muscles. So whatever is working for you, I'm going to encourage you to try 1 or 2 more. There you go. Good. Okay. Wonderful. So when you come back to your first position, let's do one last position here, and this will strengthen a little bit of the upper hip. And then this is going to take us into, we're going to go into a hamstring stretch and then into our standing position. So I'm going to hold on to my band. And this could also be the strap. And if you don't have either of those, it could be just using your own body weight. I'm going to see if I can lift one leg up and down. And then the other leg up and down. So it's like I'm chair marching, trying to stay tall in my body. Oftentimes, as people start to lift a leg, the body slouches. So sitting tall, think of that foot that's on the ground, pressing into the ground as you lift the other leg, even if it's a 1/2 inch. So the foot pressing into the floor as the other one lifts a bit. That's it. So if you were using a belt, for example, keep it going if you're still moving. It's going to look different, but it still gives you a little resistance to try to lift and push into the band and release. And lift and push into the band and release. This one's great for strengthening the muscles in the legs that help with like hip flexion. Very good. And do one more. Excellent. Okay. Very good. Unravel yourself. And just take your belts and your straps and you can leave them out to the side somewhere on your way. All right, so we're going to stretch your hamstring and then this will be our final seated stretch. And for some of you, that might be enough of a practice this morning. And for those of you who'd like to finish with some standing practices, we will do that after this last stretch. So I'm sitting a little on the edge of the chair, comfortable position for me. And extend one leg. You can choose whichever one you choose to start with. Both hands are going to be on the other leg though. So whichever leg you have extended, just be mindful, it's not stable to put weight into that leg. You want to put your hands on the bent leg with the foot that's on the floor. So your extended leg, the one that you've stretched out on the ground, I encourage you to pull the toes towards you, and that's going to start tugging on that back of the leg a little more. So I'm going to sit up tall, take a breath. As I hinge forward, keep pulling the toes back towards you just till you feel something. And it really doesn't take much most of the time for the hamstrings to give most people some sensation as we do this stretch. Very good. It's a really good everyday stretch. Come out. If it's causing you discomfort, come up and bring the leg in. Now, if you say go into something that's sort of this, oh, this is an excellent hamstring stretch, but you go into it and it's sort of triggering your sciatica, for example. If you know right away that it's causing you discomfort in this moment, it might not be that you don't do this ever. It might be just not now. So keep that in mind. It might be, oh, one leg felt great doing this stretch, the other side, not so much. Then come out, leave it out. Give yourself permission to modify the practice to suit you in this moment. So sitting up tall, your other leg is extended, pulling the toes towards you. So we are flexing that extended leg. Hands are on the other leg on the thigh bone. Sitting tall, hinging at the hip crease to come forward just a bit till you feel something. Could be looking down at the ground. A little sigh breath, release any held tension here. That's it. Yep, and then coming up. Very good. Okay, so you bring your foot in. Wonderful. So we did a little bit longer seated practice today. Wasn't my intention, it just happened to be that way today. So we're going to finish with some standing balances. You could always observe this. Say it's just not for you today, but you would like to watch. You could leave this out and go have your coffee or your tea. Or you can just come along with me. So I've got my feet a little closer to the chair. All right. And then I'm going to hinge at the hips, and I'm just going to explore. So everybody's going to be different. I'm going to explore as I come forward, 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 forward. As my nose goes over my knees, I can feel there's more weight in my feet. And at this point, I can press into the heels to come up. Now, to do this slowly is really challenging. So if that just didn't work for you this morning, if you are down in your chair and you need to use the sides of your chair for support to help you lift, or if you have a walker or you have some other way of getting out of the chair that's better for you, that's okay. It's just sort of a general guideline to hinge forward and then press into the feet to come up. Now, as soon as we've come from seated to standing, we have changed the center of gravity in your body. So really helpful before you go anywhere, think of your feet as your roots. At all times, if you're ever feeling unstable, our tendency is to kind of lock up and then try to grab something that is stable. But if you think of your center of gravity in your center and in your feet, I always encourage people to kind of bend their knees and visualize spreading out the foot and think of, if you were a tree, your roots would be in your heels and your ball of your foot, and they're moving down into the ground. So with the knees slightly bent, think of spreading out the feet, rooting down into the ground through your heels. And then when you feel stable, as you start to straighten the legs, think of pressing through your heels. So you feel like you're rooting through your heels to lengthen through the crown of your head. All right, so we're going to set up for balance. I always like to have something in, or my students, I encourage something in front of them, like a chair or the back of your couch or countertop. So what you might do is mindfully walk to the back of your chair so that you have your chair in front of you for support. Okay, and I'm going to move my chair aside just so you can see me, but please feel free, or please do ensure that you have something in front of you to hold on to in case, just in case. It's always good to have that little just in case. All right. Okay, so if you're at the back of your chair, I'm just going to mimic that I have my chair here. You could be holding your chair. For some of you, you might not need that today. It might be something that you just use just in case. So I'm going to have my feet a little wider than hips, something that might more wider than my comfortable position. Very good. Then I'm going to bend the knees, sink into my feet. So our first practice is shifting the weight side to side. Just see, I'm going to keep my knees just a tiny bit bent, and I'm going to shift my weight from one foot to the other. And then what you may want to do as you shift your weight over to one leg, if it feels comfortable, the other leg might just kind of lift for a brief moment. So you're shifting through center, putting your body weight in one foot. If it feels comfortable, the leg could lift. You could be holding your chair. Sit, shifting, and then a little lift. That's it. Shifting through center, and a little lift. Now, if it's comfortable for you, we could add the arms. So we're going to shift our weight over to one side, whichever leg you're standing on. That arm could reach up like you were holding an umbrella as the other leg lifts. So here's our side stretch and a nice little balance practice. Shifting through center, your umbrella takes you up. That's it. Very good. Let's try it one more time on either side. Reaching, shifting. Maybe the leg lifts. And down. That's it. Last time on the other side. Reaching and shifting. And then the leg lifts. That's it. Very good. Okay, let's try one more movement here. So you got your hands on the chair. But I'm going to show you what this looks like from the side, because this is going to help us with chair pose, essentially. Okay, so I'm going to just show you from the side so you can see. So you got your hands on the chair. Very good. Feet are hip width apart now, so you might look down and bring them a little closer. Hip width, not right together. Keep a little bit of space between them. I'm going to bend my knees just a tiny bit. And then I'm going to encourage you to hinge from the hip. So you're hinging forward towards your chair just a little. And then if you can shift your weight into your heels, you'll be holding onto the chair, arms out. What you'll notice is that my knees over my ankle, but I'm really shifting my weight into my heels. And then I'm going to press into the feet to come back up again. So let's try that a couple times. So I'm going to bend the knees a tiny bit, Hinge a little bit forward from the hip crease, coming forward. Shift my weight into my heels. Stick your bum way out behind you. That's it. And then come up. Very good. Now we're going to add on to that. So the next movement we're going to do for balance is shift our weight from standing. Shift your weight forward and let the heels lift. However far they go for you. They might go all the way up and slowly all the way down. And then as you shift your weight onto your heels, you might lift the toes and hinge a little bit at the hip crease again so that you're kind of counterbalancing so you don't fall backwards. So toes lift and heels lift. That's it. Try that a few more times. Toes lift and heels lift. Set one last time. Toes lift and then heels lift. Good. All right, so the next sequence is going to sort of bring three movements into together. So I'm going to move the chair so you can see me, but you're still behind your chair. You've got your hands on the chair. First part of this is just the heel lift. So your hands on the chair, shift your weight forward and let your heels float up. Sit. And then as your heels come down, okay, bend your knees a tiny bit, hinge a little bit forward, stick your bum way out behind you. There you are in your chair pose. Very good. Now as you come up, shift your weight to one side, one leg, and then see if you can just lift the leg out to the side a little bit. Shift your weight to the other side. Lift the leg, baby. Back to center. And then as your feet come back to center, let's go up again. So you're lifting up onto the toes, heels lifting, slowly down, and then into your chair. So hinging at the hips, stick your bum way back behind you, rooting into your feet, especially your heels, coming up, shifting your weight to one leg. Maybe the leg extends. Try to go slow, shifting. Very good. We'll do it one last time. So as both feet come to the floor, lifting the heels. Slowly the heels come down. And then you bend the knees a tiny bit, hinge at the hip crease. Stick your bum way back behind you. Weight is more in your heels than the ball of your foot here. As you come up, think of the weight more centered in both feet now. And then shifting your weight to one foot. Last time, lifting the leg. And then the other leg. Very good. That's it. Very good. Shake out your feet. Wonderful. All right. Good. So let's take a moment. We're going to finish with a little gentle movement for the spine, and then we will come back to seated. How are we for time? Got 5 minutes. Perfect. So from this position here with your feet hip width apart, I'm going to bend the knees a little bit. For those of you who come to my fitness classes, you know I really love this sort of gentle hinge forward, hands on the thighs, press into the thighs, and then just see if the arms can reach up and around. Let's try that 2 more times. Knees bend, hinging at the hips, hands to the thighs, gently press into the thighs, reach the arms up and around. Sit. And then the last time. Just whatever feels comfortable for you. It doesn't have to be a large movement. Very good. Okay, wonderful. The arms come out to the sides. I'm going to bend the elbows a little and I'm going to widen the feet. So you're still behind your chair. A little widening of the feet. And then I'm going to bring my arms to my sides. We're rooting down through the feet, lengthening through the crown of the head. I want you to think of the spine always lengthening, even when we're side bending. So it's less about bending to the side, more about length. So take a big breath. And just let one arm just gently slide a little bit over to one side. Back to center. Lengthening the crown through the crown of the head as you go to the other side. Just a very small little side bend. And now maybe the arm can come along. Maybe. If the arm does not want to come along, don't force it. Keep the arms at your side like we did at the beginning. And leave the arms out. That's it. Very good. That's it. And you come back to your first position as your arms come down. I'm going to turn my feet just a wee tiny bit out. Something comfortable for you, so you can put a little bit of a spring bend in your knees, if that's comfortable for your knees. And we're going to finish with our movement of the lymphatic fluid through the upper body. Your circle could be this big. Watch out for your chair, objects around you. But you might add a larger circle if you're feeling ambitious this morning and it's feeling comfortable for you to move your arms in a large circle, then great, then go for it. You might start to sense a whooshing in the fingertips. Really, we're trying to get those fluids in the body moving. When you move your body, you move your fluids, and that's a good thing. That's it. I'm going to do one or two more, and I'm going to do the other direction. So it doesn't take much for those arms to get a little fatigue, the shoulder. Again, your shoulder movement could be this big, or it might be a larger action for you. Okay, 2 and 1. Very good. And then as the arms just chop in front of you, and turn my feet forward. And I'm just going to take my arms up, and I'm going to do a little chop. For some people, they do this chopping action back. The toes might lift. That doesn't have to happen. 2. So if you're shaking any energy right out the fingertips here, and 1. Very good. Yeah, and just allow your arms to come to your sides. Final movement. Feet are pointing forward. Feet are slightly wider than the hips. A little baby bend in the knees, maybe even just a millimeter of a bend. And the final thing is called the palm tree twist. It's common in a lot of different practices like Qigong, Tai Chi. So it might be that the opposite heel lifts, might be that the arms tap around the sides of the body. That's it. Final little gentle twist. And if the arms are tapping on the sides of the body, in Chinese medicine, this is sort of a way to sort of stimulate some of those meridians on the sides of the body. And all your meridians, the energy meridians in the body, reside in your fascia, which is kind of interesting. So as you come to a slow, still point, the body slowly comes to stillness. If it's comfortable for you, it might be a helpful opportunity to take a moment to close your eyes. To take a moment to be aware of what you're feeling in the inner body after that bit of movement. Some people will sort of, for me, it feels like a tingly sensation or fuzzy, awakened sensation in the tissues. And if your eyes are closed, I'll invite you to open them. Very good. And we'll just come around to your feet. So as your feet come back to hip width apart, just taking your mindful walk. Be aware of how your foot is making contact with the floor. So for walking meditation, it's usually sort of lifting the foot, moving the foot, place the heel, stepping, lifting, moving, placing, stepping. To walk slowly is really challenging. So I don't expect you to walk at this pace. I just am finding a pace that works for you so you can mindfully come back to the front of your chair with your slow, mindful walk. And then coming to your seat in any way that's comfortable for you. And please feel free to sit all the way back in your chair. You can sit all the way back and relax. Once you've found your seat and your rest, I'm going to invite you maybe to even just take your hands to your heart center. So maybe even just taking your right hand over your heart center and your left hand. You could alternatively just let your hands rest in your lap. Or you could let them be in the Namaste mudra, which would be palms together. I like to keep some space between my fingers with the thumbs at the heart center. And I just thought, since we ended with some slow walking, that I would finish with a poem that I love so much, that I've read it so much that I know it by heart now. And I didn't write it. It's Dana Falls, and I will put that in the comment section. I read from her a lot. She's got volumes of poetry out there that you can purchase. I think some of her books are so popular they're hard to get. Dana Faulds, Faulds. And she is a yoga teacher and a poet in the United States. And this poem is called Walk Slowly. It only takes a reminder to breathe and a moment to be still. And just like that, something in me settles, softens, and makes space for imperfection. The harsh voice of judgment drops to a whisper, and I remember again that life is not a relay race, that we will all cross the finish line, that waking up to life is what we were born for. And as many times as I catch myself charging forward without even knowing where I'm going, that many times I can make the choice to stop, to breathe, to be, and to walk slowly into the mystery. So take a moment to thank yourself for showing up today for the practice. And I thank you so much for being here with me today. Sorry about the short, I think it was a 2-minute delay in our start time today. So know that all of these practices reside on my page. If you go to my Inward Bound Wellness YouTube page, I leave them all up. And so all of them are sort of dated or numbered. So you can find the practices that you like the best. And then you can always scroll through them to find just maybe the standing version or the seated parts of the practice that work for you. And I will continue to offer these Sunday classes into the fall and over the winter. So thank you for your practice today and your patience. Please feel free to leave any comments if you have questions that come up. And I hope to see you next week. Happy September, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. Namaste. I'm my camera operator.